In this video, I want to talk about how I look at my topographical map before I get to the lake to try to break down a pre-spawn bite, a springtime bite. I'm going to show you a couple things that I look for and a couple things that I personally do that I think help me to break down fisheries a lot quicker. Now, real quick before we get into the video, this one is brought to you by my apparel company, Finn Fishing. Right now, if you buy one of the USA made sun shirts, one of the only USA made sun shirts out there on the market, you can get one of my bass hats with a wooden patch on it for 50% off. All you got to do is add that shirt to cart, add that hat to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout, and it really helps support this channel. Let's go ahead now and dive in. All right, let's look at kind of your typical lake right here. There's a lot of lakes that are kind of like this across the country. On the base of it, you have a deeper clear water section. In the middle part, you have kind of your kind of a little bit more stained water, and then towards the upper end, you have a little bit more muddier water with you know, a river or a creek coming in. It's the same thing for this lake that's over here. This section here is very clear. This section here is kind of your middle section, stained water, and then up here you have, you know, more of a river section. So this is kind of what you see in a lot of different lakes. Now, when it comes to the pre-spawn, something that I've always kind of liked to do is concentrate a little bit on the middle of the lake, wherever that may be. And the reason being is because the middle of the lake is gonna have a little bit of watercolor. It's not always the clearest water. And because it has a little bit of watercolor to it, it's typically going to warm up a little bit quicker than the lower end of the lake. Not saying you can't catch fish down here, because you absolutely can, but because you're dealing with water that's kind of stained, it's just gonna warm up a little bit quicker and it gets fish moving. Now, if you look at the middle section of this particular lake, there's a couple of places that really jump out. You know, I always like to look for wintering areas and spawning areas. So you can see these big creeks. There's a big creek right here. This is gonna be some prime spawning ground. There's another big creek up the lake here a little bit. This is also very prime spawning ground, especially on the upper part of this. And we're gonna talk a little bit about both of these particular creeks. But when I get to a new body of water, I don't always go to the biggest creeks on the lake. And the biggest reason is because it takes a lot of time to break those down. So what I like to look for are little creeks, little kind of middle size creeks that kind of set up like a bigger creek arm. And this is exactly like this particular one here. We have two little arms coming in. There's going to be some great areas to spawn in. You have a kind of a north facing cove over here. Great little section for that fish to spawn in. So spawning habitat. The other thing that I like about this particular little creek here is you have the creek channel just out here. So, and you have a deep water basin all out here. So there's going to be a lot of fish that will winter out on some of these really steep drops out on here, even over here a little bit. And then as they kind of make their way up to spawn, I just want to talk a little bit about their movements. Now, before live scope, I would always look at, you know, before live scope, before Mega Live, before all the forward facing sonar, I would always look at a lot of these, you know, points and humps leading into the spawning area. So I kind of have a spawning area here. I kind of have my wintering grounds here. And in the middle here, I kind of have, you know, here's a small point that has that creek channel that kind of swings right close to it. This is going to be one of the first places that those fish pull up to. Right up here, right in the middle of this particular creek arm, you have this big hump. Now this hump is actually really, really shallow on top. It says 4 foot right there. And so that's pretty shallow. So I can see that being a good place maybe later in the day as the water gets a little bit warmer for fish to move up on. But you just got to think about fish kind of making this movement from the main lake kind of back into the pockets. And so these little areas would be some of the first areas that I would hit. This little particular creek arm stretch right here, you can see again, it's a little bit harder to see, but you know, the drain or the ditch that you have here swings really close to this bank. And this bank right here is one of the last places before you get to some of these spawning pockets in the back. So if your water temps in the 50s, you know, and those fish are getting ready to spawn back here, this is gonna be one of the last places that they set up. They're gonna be right here, and sometimes they'll wait there for a little bit until they kind of basically know that weather is gonna be good and they can come up into some of these pockets and spawn. spawn. So that would be another really good area. This kind of point, although it's, you know, not a real defined point, it's just kind of a subtle flat point in between. Those type of areas are always good. Anytime you have a creek arm that splits off like that, that is a great staging area that fish will stop on before they go to spawn. A lot of times I'm gonna attack these type of areas with crankbaits and jigs. Good old power fishing techniques. And here's another little deep section. You see right here, you can see how the water really cuts in close. There's a little deep section. Those are prime little spots. You can really narrow down a lake by looking for these little areas where it just cuts in real close to the bank. It's just a perfect, a lot of times you're gonna have rock in these areas. Not all the time, but a lot of times you'll have rock. And if not rock, you'll have mud banks with laydowns. And sometimes those laydowns are the last place that they stop before they go to spawn. Now, if I'm fishing a laydown, I might be throwing a spinner bait or something like that. Still, I might flip a jig. Those could be really, really good areas. Now, with the, you know, with the invention of, you know, the forward-facing sonars, what you see a lot is guys that are fishing the drain. And what we kind of found out, you know, over the last couple of years about fish behavior is that, you know, fish don't always follow an exact path to get back. You know, some fish definitely do, but not all fish do. So a lot of guys, when they're going out with their Mega Live, their forward-facing sonars, their live scopes, they're actually scanning this green section right here. This green section that I have highlighted, this is basically the main drain that runs through this particular creek arm. This is the type of area those guys are scanning a lot of. And basically all you're looking for is bait balls, because there might be, you know, for example, right through here, there might be just bait out in the middle, and those fish are just feeding up on that bait before they go back into spawn. Now, those same fish may kind of rest over here, or they may feed on a different species. You know, maybe they're chasing bait through the morning out here, and then later in the day they come up to the rock bank, the rock point here, or there's a little rock transition we talked about right there, and they're eating crawfish before they go up. So what we just kind of found is that when fish move up to spawn, they're not always following an exact path. You know, it's not an exact road that they go. Sometimes they just kind of just come in, and you're gonna have fish that are suspended out in the middle of this drain, and you're gonna have fish that are on the bank that you can catch with kind of your typical bass fishing techniques, you know, power fishing. Now, what I typically do is say I find fish on this particular channel swing right here. This channel swing, you kind of have to break it down. Then, and basically you say to yourself, okay, there's fish on the mouth of this particular pocket, and it's the first, more or less, it's the first channel swing of that pocket. So it's towards the mouth. Really, it's towards the first 1/3 of the creek. So maybe I go to another small creek, like I'll just swing over and fish this other really small creek here. If fish are right there, then there's a good chance that fish might be actually right there. You can see there's kind of another creek channel swing. It's at the mouth. And so a lot of times you can break down these small and medium-sized creeks like this very quick. And then once you start to figure out the pattern, maybe you actually find that they're in the way far back. Maybe it just depends on where you find them. Then that's when I like to take it to the bigger creeks. That's when I like to go up here and go into some of these bigger creeks, because the bigger creeks are typically going to have a bigger population of bass, but they take a lot more time to find. So that if I'm catching fish on those main creek channel swings, you know, right off the giddy, you can kind of see there's a point here right at the mouth, right there. I could see it, fish being right there. I could see fish definitely being right on that place where it swings up, and of course, kind of down here. Now, I don't really love the way that this looks on a map, because it's all kind of the same throughout here. So there could be a fish along a long section that just takes a while to fish. That's why I like these little short sections where it's like you can see how much tighter the lines are right there. So I can fish through a section very quickly and find out if those fish are there. But then maybe you find that the fish are towards their last spots. You know, maybe once you fish this medium-sized creek over here, you find that the fish are on this last little channel swing that we talked about. Maybe this one here, maybe this one here. You know that they're getting really close to spawn. You take it up again to the bigger creek arms, and again, you're just gonna look at the map. Where would these fish kind of set up? Now this one, I can definitely see fish spawning in here. It's kind of a north facing pocket, so fish could spawn all through here. You have a little bit of a tight section right there where they could definitely kind of just school up or even stage right on this little point right there on this little creek channel. So that's just kind of how I like to go about breaking down a body of water. Now, the big thing that you should always know is that, you know, bass aren't always going to be doing the exact same thing. So, and especially in certain parts of the lake. So maybe on this particular creek, we find, the one that we started on, we find that there's fish that are, you know, right on this last channel swing. And that's great. The water, say the water temperature is 58 there, but maybe when we go up to the more northern part of this particular lake, you get up here and this water temp may be 64, 65. It's actually a lot further in the process. And so fish might start spawning. A lot of times they're going to start spawning in the northern part of these lakes that warm up quicker before they do down lake. So you might have to just realize, okay, in the midsection, those fish were staged up. But in this northern section, these fish may be on beds. They may be spawning. So if I go back in this particular pocket and maybe there's, you know, buckbrush or maybe there's some sort of cover, I might just start pitching at the cover with a jig or a worm or a plastic of some sort and trying to catch fish that are maybe on beds. And then maybe you actually, oh shoot, I don't know what I did now. Let's exit out of there real quick, go back to my map. But maybe you are fishing on the very south end of the lake, you know, and again, there's a lot. Typically on a lot of lakes, this is the bigger section and the deeper section. So there's just a lot of volume of water down here that needs to get heated up. And so these fish, although the fish are spawning in the northern part, they may be closer to their winter patterns down here. Right here you have a main river swing, and these fish might be sitting out on this bar, staging up. They haven't even made their way back yet. So it's just something that you kind of have to think about. You know, I always love looking at a map before I get on the water and literally just trying to pick out. What I'll do is I actually make waypoints. I'll come in here and I'll just, you know, select a point. And this is before I know anything. I hit a waypoint, and what I like to do a lot of times is color code them. So I will just do the regular icon, but down here, you know, I think these fish might be in a winter pattern, so I'm gonna just pick blue. And when I get to the lake, I think, okay, if the fish are in a winter pattern, they're gonna be on the blue, you know. And then I think, well, if the fish are on a summer or more of a like spawning, they're further along in the spawning process, maybe in this particular creek, I think that they might be spawning. So then I'll just come over here, I'll double click and I'll select what I think is like a spawning. For me, it's like red, which really blends in with the red background I have right now. But that's how I kind of break down lakes. So before I get to the body of water, if it's a new body of water, I just sit down in the boat for 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, and I'll just put a bunch of waypoints out. And I like to put waypoints all over the lake and all over different sections. And then once I start kind of figuring something out, once I get bites, I mean, most of the time I will have a lot of waypoints. I might have 20 or 30 different areas that I think these fish are. And if I believe that they're in a winter pattern and I have a bunch of blue dots all over, a bunch of blue waypoints, then I just start running the blue waypoints. And it helps me to just be very quick out there on the water. If you guys enjoyed this video, you might like my most recent video right here. Also, give this one a thumbs up, like, comment down below, and I will see you guys tomorrow.